Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky, the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And today we'll talk about how to make your employees happy and engaged with hybrid work best practices. Now, thinking about choice in work models is the key here. There was a research by BCG, Boston Consulting Group, that reports on work models, and it found that 62% of employees feel excluded from policy decisions around hybrid work. That lack of a sense of agency, where the employees don't feel like they have a voice and ability to make a choice, leads to low satisfaction and low morale. And that is key, that you don't want that low satisfaction and low morale. Instead, what you want is employees to be content and happy. And they are more content and happy if they have closer proximity, if they have more influence on the decision-making process around hybrid work and remote work. Instead, if you have the company itself just dictate without employee input policies on work locations, that causes a lot more unhappiness. So you want to really focus on inclusive decision-making. That reflects the values of the workforce, and that causes people to feel like they have buy-in and they are making the decisions. So if you want people to be contented and happy and have high morale, and of course high morale and happiness leads to high productivity and retention of your workforce, that is something to really be thinking about. The decision-making around hybrid work, bringing it closer to the workers. So the survey highlights that dissatisfaction with the kind of work model chosen for hybrid work leads to turnover. So employees are likely to quit if they're unhappy with the amount and level of type of flexibility. In fact, they're 2.5 times more likely to consider leaving within a year if they're unhappy compared to if they're happy about their hybrid work policies. So let's rethink work flexibility from the perspective of employee retention. The current job market and future job market are unquestionably going to be impacted by these trends. So companies need to really adapt to changing preferences of the workforce and think about flexibility as a strategic necessity in the war for talent. Now, where and how do you want to make your scheduling so as to align with workforce preferences while still achieving company goals? So a team collaborative process seems best. So when a team gets together, and it's not the top leadership, it's not individuals, when a team, rank and file team of those 6 to 8 people, rank and file, the direct lower level supervisors, when they make a decision around how and frequently and when people work together, and not just the supervisor dictating everything, when the team gets together and comes to consensus, that boosts engagement to 46%. Compared to 41% if individual employees just make the decisions for themselves. Because of course, then the team is not coordinated and people are coming to the office and they're not seeing the people they would like to be in the office, and that leads to a lot of challenges. The lowest level of engagement, however, is when the top leadership dictates a schedule, say 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday or something like that, or Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Then that's what leads to the lowest engagement at 35%. That is something to really be thinking about. So the best engagement comes when the team together comes in a consensus way consensus decision-making process to make a schedule. So thinking about the desire for control and collaboration in the work environment, so the team's desire collaboration and control at the local team level. So that's what you want to focus on, that local team level. And the majority favor a hybrid model. So when you give teams the ability to collaborate, you'll see that the majority choose a hybrid model, having some remote work time and some in-office time. And again, employee retention is linked to this flexibility of remote work. And of course, we see that the highest level of engagement is not linked to pure flexibility. It's not linked to pure employee decision-making by themselves, but teams making a decision together. So that's a combination of coordination and collaboration with flexibility. Atlassian is a great example, and they're one of my clients who I work with, so I know their model pretty well. They're a great example of successful, flexible work. So employee choice is the key for Atlassian. 92% of employees report that the flexible policy at Atlassian helps them in their work performance, and 91% cite flexibility as a key reason for staying at Atlassian. That's really important. It's a key reason for staying at Atlassian, so they're clearly getting a lot of retention benefits. Now, it's not a purely fully remote work model. They have periodic in-office meetings for their teams, and that really helps them with social bonding, especially for new hires. So new hires get the most benefits from these occasional in-person gatherings. And that flexibility leads to increased sense of team unity because the team makes decisions together on when to come to the office, when to work remotely, and how to work remotely, how to work in the office. And that's really key. So you have team bonding and team unity as a result of a decision-making process on how the team works together. And that's a great model for other companies that want to have this level of retention and high work performance. Now, a challenge here is the status quo bias. It's one of these dangerous judgment errors called cognitive biases that we run into because of how our mind is wired. So the status quo bias is a bias, a bad decision-making process, a tendency where we tend to resist change in work models. We prefer the status quo, even if the status quo is going to be harmful for us. So it's a preference for familiar and office-centric models, even though the familiar and office-centric models might be harmful. And that hinders adoption of more flexible and team-driven policies. So that is something to be thinking about. The status quo bias is a serious problem for good decision-making for teams. So overcoming that status quo bias is key for hybrid policy success. And recognizing this bias is critical in the modern workforce. So you want to embrace change to enhance satisfaction and engagement, even though leaders might have a preference for the status quo. Now, another thing to think about, another cognitive bias is loss aversion. So this loss aversion is a fear of loss, a fear of losing what you have. So leaders tend to focus on the potential downsides of hybrid work, focus on the losses, and not think sufficiently about the gains. They are biased to think about the risks and not really thinking sufficiently about the gains from new, more flexible work models. So that hinders the embrace of benefits. And so addressing loss aversion is critical in developing good policy around hybrid work. So you want to encourage leaders to weigh the benefits and the losses. So consider the pros and cons and think about their impact on various factors like employee performance, employee morale, employee engagement, employee retention, which all leads to company bottom lines. So recognize and mitigate the fear of change that accompanies loss aversion because you don't want to lose things, and that's definitely a challenge. And so balance perceived risks with potential advantages, and that's what you want to do in order to create a more dynamic and engaged and forward-looking workforce. So, thinking about the implications for leaders in hybrid work. Leadership understanding of team decision-making policies is vital. It's a shift. It represents a change in work structure and management, so traditional top-down mandates are no longer effective. The new leadership style is attentive, empathetic, and empowering. Not something that leaders are typically thinking about too much. Attentive, empathetic, empowering. There's more control, task, delegation, management. But if you want to actually have people work effectively when they are more autonomous, which is a really important element of working when you're remote, you want to be more attentive to their needs, more empathetic to their needs, and empower them. So control should be redefined from that top-down control as empowering team autonomy and mutual team responsibility, peer-to-peer accountability. So balance between organizational consistency, so having sameness across the organization, and flexibility, because different teams have different needs and will come to different conclusions about what works best for each team. And the cultural transformation is really needed for changing your policies. You need to have more open communication and more trust as part of your culture, and leaders need to facilitate and enable autonomy at the team level. Again, not the top level leadership making decisions, not individuals, but rank and file teams. So how do you think about this leadership transition? So it's a shift from command and control leadership to collaborative leadership. And that requires cultural change, which is going to be difficult for many people, and that's a challenge. So they need training. They need to have training in how to have effective hybrid and remote work leadership for a collaborative decision-making process. There need to be clear communication about the goals of any team, the boundaries, what the standards and norms are. And so you want to provide the teams with tools and skills for autonomy as a result of them getting training on this topic. Have feedback mechanisms for continual refinement of these practices. And this approach is what leads to higher satisfaction and engagement. By empowering teams, you will drive innovation in whatever the teams do and the success of your organization. And how do you maximize productivity in these settings? Well, maximizing productivity has to do with employee engagement and buy-in. Employees who are bought in to whatever work styles are adopted because they have impact on the decision-making process, they will be happier, they will be more engaged, and they will be more productive. So flexible scheduling is key for workforce efficiency. We do know that people are willing to work some of the time that they wouldn't be commuting, something like around 40% on average. And so people are working longer and longer hours, and people are generally more productive because they're less distracted. And we have a lot of research showing that. So empowered employees are more invested in their work. And the hybrid work model is what encourages more autonomy and more creativity from employees. So effective leadership is pivotal in maximizing productivity. And that effective leadership is what we talked about earlier: empowering leadership, attentive leadership, leadership that gives people more autonomy rather than command and control. So you want to balance remote and office work for optimal output, doing the things that work best in the office, and things that work best remotely. And things that work best in the office are more intense collaborative forms of activities, like more intense performance evaluation one-on-ones, socializing and team bonding, strategic decision-making conversations. But what works best at home is your more individual activities. So individual head-down work, analysis, programming, whatever it might be, writing briefs for lawyers. Then you want to do your asynchronous communication, your emails, Microsoft Teams messages at home, and video conference calls and phone calls. There's no need to go to the office and distract others with your phone calls and video conference calls, and no need to be distracted by them. And of course, most of what most people do, most work-capable folks, they spend their time on their individual work rather than collaborative work. And you want to build trust and accountability in teams. Trust is foundational for effective hybrid work models. And having, of course, accountability as part of trust is crucial for remote and hybrid environments. Leaders have a crucial role in cultivating a culture of accountability. They need to have clear expectations and have open communication about all the standards and needs. So you want to build trust through inclusive decision-making processes and ensure that teams, the rank and file teams that I mentioned, are aligned with broader organizational values. And that is the strategy for maintaining team cohesion with the organization as a whole in a hybrid work model. So as I think about the conclusion, you want to orient toward embracing the future of work. Hybrid models are the path forward, and organizations will thrive by valuing employee input. The future of work is centered around more flexible and empowered models. Leaders' role is crucial in navigating this process of transformation, this cultural process, this shift from command and control to collaboration and empowerment. And hybrid work is the new standard in the job market, in the war for talent. Organizations will benefit from embracing change, so don't fall for the status quo bias and loss aversion. The future success of any organization and any leader hinges on adapting to these employee-centric policies where employees drive the decision-making process at the team level. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you checked out the show and leave a review. It helps others discover the show and it helps us improve the show.